Kim Jong-ran is a girl who has worked hard from a young age and faced a difficult life. Her mother was a gambling addict and never took care of her. She only showed up from time to time to ask her for money. But all of that could change today since, thanks to her efforts, she had gotten a job interview. She had prepared a lot to become the bodyguard of one of the biggest businessmen in the country. But when she is interviewed, the lawyer sees that she had no education or recommendations, so that's why they reject her. She was desperate, so she lunges at the lawyer and tells him that there's no one more prepared than her, seeing how desperate she was. The president hires her because she is exactly what he is looking for. Jong-ran was very happy, but there was a small problem. She had a criminal record and hadn't put it on her resume. Because of this, the lawyer tells her they can't hire her. She leaves very sad because she had almost managed to escape her miserable life, only to ruin her day even more. We see that her mother was leaving her apartment. Apparently, she had only gone there to steal the little she had. Jong-ran tries to stop her, but instead of feeling bad for stealing from her daughter, she hits her, and she tells her that she is her mother and that she must obey everything she says. Days later, we see that the president had noticed how desperate she was. Also, her criminal record was for stealing just some simple sanitary pads. She had stolen them when she was a teenager and went to the detention center for 6 months. To top off her tragic story, her mother had taken out several loans in her name, so she was practically in debt for life. Her life consisted of simply working for her mother's addictions. As a result, the president laughs and says she's perfect and just what he's looking for. When they call to tell her she's been hired, Ran almost cries with happiness because her life is finally changing. The next day, we meet Jong-wan, the owner of a strawberry company. His main client was the president. That day, while delivering strawberries, he meets Jong-ran, who saves him from being hit by his door. Then he goes to talk to the lawyer, who tells him it's a full-time job. He must follow the rules, be careful, and he leaves to see the lawyer. Will she be fired, like the other bodyguards who were there before her? Later, we meet Yeji, an outgoing girl who's unafraid to speak her mind. When she sees that Hyun-ran is like her, she tells her they should be best friends. At night, the president doesn't eat his food, so the housekeeper gives it to Hyun-ran. But even though it was really expensive food, it tasted really bad, so she just makes herself some noodles. Then she realizes that there was something strange in the house, and that's how she discovers that there were many hidden cameras everywhere. The next day, the president scolds Hyun-ran for her long sleeves, but she wore them to hide her scar. Afterward, the president attends a company meeting. His son wanted to include idols in their next advertising campaign, but the president scolds him and tells him to keep his personal matters out of the company. One of the executives was very worried and tells him that he can't leave the company in his daughter's hands, since she's not very competent, and he's sure she'll drive it to bankruptcy. The president reassures him, saying a good successor is already chosen. Days later, the anniversary of the president's wife's death is observed. The whole company goes to pay their respects. But his stepdaughter throws away her flowers and tells him that her mother didn't like those cheap flowers. Here, the driver tells us that the president married a widow who had 2 children. The president had little money, but his wife was wealthy, so he didn't get along with her children. We also learned he had a biological daughter, but after going abroad, she developed bad habits and lost her life as a result. Now, his 2 stepchildren are patiently waiting for the director's death so they can split the inheritance. After the ceremony ends, the president asks Jong-ran about her scar. She tells him she'll answer only if he also answers her questions. The president agrees, and here Jong-ran tells him. Then the president tells her that he's afraid someone will kill him. That's why he filled his whole house with cameras. Days later, with the holidays approaching, the president asks the lawyer to stay and eat with him undisturbed. But he says he can't do it since he's a countryman at heart and wants to go back home. Later, the holidays come and everyone gets paid with a bonus. With nowhere to go, Jong-ran stays at the president's house. For his part, he tells her that he doesn't mind. On the contrary, he's happy that he won't spend the holidays alone while she eats. The president can't help but remember his biological daughter. Apparently, what the rumors said didn't actually happen. Ran asks him, what really happened? He tells her that he met a woman before getting married, but due to life circumstances, they broke up. She got pregnant, but she never told the president anything. He found out 19 years later when his daughter was already an adult. She had grown up in an orphanage, and that's why she held a grudge against her father. They eventually got along better, so he sent her to study abroad. Before he could finish his story, his stepdaughter arrived. She found out that Jong-ran was there, so she was determined to find her at any cost. The bodyguard hid as best she could, but in her youth, she had gone through something similar. Her father used to come looking for her at home drunk, and she always tried to hide. Now that she has to hide again, she can't help but cry. The next day, the president summons her to his secret hideout and reveals the real story behind his daughter's death, which was very different from media reports. His stepdaughter actually killed his daughter. She has always hated the president because she believes he stole her inheritance and his biological daughter meant less money for her. She reveals she hired her to get revenge for us and admits she doesn't have much time left because she was diagnosed with cancer. Jong-ran doesn't think twice and asks him, "Who do I have to kill?" The president tells her that she'll have to kill him, but first they have to get married. If she inherits all his assets, his stepchildren will get nothing. That would be his best revenge. When they try to get rid of her, Jong-ran must be ready and catch them red-handed, so they rot in jail. His daughter will get the justice she deserves. Jong-ran knew it would be very dangerous and that it wasn't worth risking her life for money. That's why she tells the president she can't help him. He doesn't pressure her and just says he was wrong about her. Later, when she's ready to leave, she gets a call from her mother. That's when she realizes she has nowhere to go. Outside, only her mother and a pile of debts are waiting for her. That's how she realizes she has no other choice. Days later, when the holidays are over, they begin their plan to get married. Jong-ran puts laxative in the driver's coffee, and he has no choice but to run to the bathroom. The only one who was aware of all their plans was the lawyer who helps them with the paperwork and also acts as a witness. If all goes well, Jong-ran keeps the money but gives company control to the lawyer, so everyone wins. After marrying, the president visits the factory to test a new product. The lawyer tells Jong-ran that she must take care of her mother before she causes trouble at night. They continue with phase 2 of their plan. Jong-ran will directly succeed the president, and a new president must be appointed in 3 months. Until then, she must remain safe, as the evil stepdaughter wants her gone. That's why she has to go to Muchang, a small village where everyone knows each other. There, she can watch everyone and escape if a hitman comes after her. The housekeeper eavesdrops, but Jong-ran notices and confronts her. The president tells her not to be nosy and just to take his card and buy something nice. She agrees, and the president tells Jong-ran that money fixes everything. A few days later, the president bids farewell to his friend. The strawberry delivery man admits he doesn't like strawberries. He only eats them because he grows them. The lawyer takes the opportunity to tell Jong-ran that when she goes to the village, she should stay away from him, since he's just a supporting character without any importance. In the afternoon, the president goes upstairs and suffers an attack. At the hospital, the doctor tells him his condition has worsened and he has less time to live. The president says it's time to advance his plans, since his stepdaughter will surely discover everything. And just as he said, she already knew and was eagerly waiting for the time of his death. Jong-ran tells him that she's not ready yet, but she'll do it anyway. Because of this, the president decides to leave her with no options. So he records his will and takes his own life. When she hears the gunshot, she runs to his room. But it was already too late. There was nothing she could do. On the day of the funeral, the stepchildren were very happy. They couldn't wait for the time to choose the new president and get back everything that was rightfully theirs. But the lawyer tells them there was a small change in the will. When they arrive at the church, they discover President Jong-ran's wife. She greets her, but her stepdaughter tries to mistreat her. However, she stands up for herself and demands respect as the new mother. After the funeral, Jong-ran officially becomes the new lady of the house. The staff are now very confused. Hyeji wanted to support and treat her friend as usual, but Jong-ran told her she now had to speak more respectfully. Meanwhile, the stepchildren wanted to know what they could do to get their inheritance back. The lawyer tells them that it will be very difficult since their father multiplied the inheritance their mother had left them, so they won't be able to just take their share. Because of that, they beat up the lawyer so that he finds a solution. The stepdaughter tells the housekeeper to keep Jong-ran locked up until they can take everything from her. She teams up with the driver and promises to share the rewards and help with him. Hyeji had heard everything, So she quickly goes to her friend to tell her. The next day, Jong-ran decides to run away despite their attempts to stop her. As a skilled fighter, she easily defeats them and escapes. The spies of the stepdaughter were following her, so she starts the next phase of her plan. Instead of fleeing by plane to another country, she escapes by bus to the small town of Muchang. In the town, she will pretend to be a teacher and work at the kindergarten run by the lawyer's sister, but she didn't expect Ju-won to pick her up. She thought he would recognize her, though he had never seen her face. Because the town's most famous lawyer recommended her, no one had any reason to doubt her. Even so, Jong-ran preferred to stay alert. Because of this, she acted very strangely, which made Ju-won start to suspect her. That's why he began to ask all kinds of questions. For example, why would a woman with her education move to such a remote village? She becomes uncomfortable and tells him not to focus on her. Here, Jong-ran recalls the director warning her that no one can know about their marriage, as society will judge her. She replied that she was already used to it, and that throughout her life, people have said worse things to her. Besides, with all the money she's going to earn, it's a very small price to pay. Back to the present. Ju-won's friend had searched for Jong-ran on social media, but he couldn't find anything at all. No matter how much he searched online, her name doesn't show up. This makes her even more suspicious. For his part, Lee Hastro was making his moves. He went to the underworld to look for the best trackers in Korea. He wanted them to find Jong-ran and kill her. But the mobsters refused, saying they're not killers. But for a little more money, they can put him in touch with people who do that kind of work. Meanwhile, in the village, Ju-won tells the other parents that the teacher seems suspicious and that they should investigate her before trusting her with their children. Also, all the teachers who had come before had problems in the city. But since her resume was pretty good, the other parents wanted to give her a chance. Since a teacher of that caliber would never return to the village, they agreed to treat her well without her noticing. When she got home, Ju-won's son was at the teacher's house. Apparently, that was his secret hideout before she moved in. He apologizes to her, promising it won't happen again. The lawyer fires the driver and housekeeper, but keeps Hye-yi for helping Jong-ran. The next day was the teacher's first day of school. That day, she had to sign her contract. So Ju-won tells the principal that she should be careful and check all her information before hiring her. The lawyer had gotten her a new identity with an impeccable resume. Without a doubt, there was no one more qualified than her for the position. But someone with that resume moving to a small town was very suspicious. But the kindergarten was in serious financial trouble since a man wanted to buy it and demolish it to build a nursing home because there weren't many children. That was the future of the town. But the principal still had faith and told him that she would gather the money to buy the property. Then the principal talked to her contacts and found out that the teacher's identity was suspicious. When she calls to confirm with her previous jobs, she discovers that she had never worked there. That makes her very scared. Jong-ran confronts her and tells her not to be afraid, but that makes her panic and start screaming. Because of this, the new teacher decides to call the lawyer to explain the situation to her. As his sister, the lawyer confesses everything to her, telling her she is the president's wife and must hide for 3 months. Her sister refuses to help them, but Jong-ran tells her that she heard she has financial problems, so she's willing to buy the kindergarten. If she lets her stay for 3 months, the principal gets very excited and tells her that she'll gladly help her. But she didn't expect Ju-won to be right outside. However, luckily for her, he didn't hear much, just the principal thanking her. The principal skillfully deceives him. She says the new teacher agreed to work with them, which is why she thanked her so much. Before the children arrive, the principal asks her if she has the necessary education to be a teacher. Jong-ran tells her no, since she only finished high school, but since it will only be 3 months, she will do her best. Meanwhile, the stepdaughter goes to the police station to file a missing person report. The officer tells her that unless the person has a disability, an adult can leave home whenever they want. But the stepdaughter had a lot of influence, so with one phone call, she solves everything, and the police immediately issue a missing person alert. Meanwhile, we see that the stepson was looking for Jong-ran's mother. That's why they go to her close friend who sells her for 18 million won. Then, since she is her close friend, she warns her that they're looking for her and asks her to stay alert. Back in the village, Jong-ran has no idea what to do on her first day of class, so she just starts teaching the kids self-defense. Because she's tough, she uses Dino Pink as an example and deflates him with a punch. The kids feel very sad and start doing R.S. Pime to revive him. When they see it doesn't work, they start crying. Because of this, Ju-won complains to her for being so rough and tells her that now she's even more suspicious. So he asks her not to break the kids' hearts. She tells him not to worry because that won't happen. When she returns to the classroom, the principal tells her that money is missing from an envelope in her records. She can't help but suspect her. Ran is offended but understands the suspicion, so she starts checking the cameras she installed and discovers that a salesman had entered the school. So she thinks he took the money. When she reaches him, she interrogates and then hits him when he won't confess. As a result, she's taken to the police station. There we find out that the principal was the one who got confused, since she was the one who took the money and paid some bills. Because of that, she apologizes to the vendor and begs him not to report the teacher. For her part, she apologizes and promises to buy all his products as compensation. That's how they reach an agreement. Ju-won tells her that not everything can be solved with money, but she says that yes, everything can be solved with her money. When she returns to the classroom, she realizes that maybe Ju-won is right. That's why, instead of buying another dino, Pink fixes the one she had broken. As she exits the classroom, she meets one of the children's mothers. She went to pick her up because they wanted to throw her a welcome party, so they wanted to find out what kind of food she likes and everything they can about her. But Ju-won finds them and starts saying that it's wrong. Because of this, Jong-ran tells her not to do anything to avoid misunderstandings. Meanwhile, in the city, Hye-gi found the president's secret hideout and uncovered his whole plan. Right at that moment, the driver and the housekeeper go to visit her. They tell her that there's a reward of 100 million if they find out where it is. Jong-ran Hye-gi had already discovered it, but he didn't want to share the reward. At night, Jong-ran calls the lawyer to say her cousin is beginning to suspect her. Therefore, the lawyer asks her to get along with everyone and endure just 3 months, as hiding her elsewhere would be difficult. That's why the next day she puts on makeup and starts getting along with her students' mothers. But that day was Saturday, and Jong-ran didn't know that there were no classes on Saturdays. So she decides it's better to throw a welcome party, but organized by herself, to avoid misunderstandings in the city. Hye-gi had discovered absolutely everything, so she decides to go to the village to help her friend in the small town. Jong-ran was trying hard to maintain her image as the perfect teacher, but she had left her laptop open and Ju-won entered her house, so she must avoid at all costs that he sees the security cameras. That's why she gets very close to him, as if she were going to kiss him, so she can close the computer. Ju-won, nervous, tells her that although it may not seem so, he's very traditional and can't give away his little treasure until marriage. At that moment, before things get more awkward, Hye-gi arrives to save her. Jong-ran wasn't happy at all with the idea, but she had no choice but to accept Hye-gi being there, because she could reveal the truth and ruin her plans. That's why she offers her money to leave, but she says no. The only thing she wants is to help her friend, so she asks her to be best friends. Otherwise, she'll reveal the truth. Jong-ran has no other choice, so they both go out to the welcome party. At the party, it was clear the town was close-knit and happy to have Jong-ran with them. But, as Ju-won had said, she was too good for such a small town, so they couldn't help but be suspicious. That's why they decide to question her a bit while they eat. The police officer had a sister who studied at the same university, so he starts with basic questions. Jong-ran hadn't gone to university, so she didn't know anything at all, but luckily Hye-gi had gone, so she answers everything. Also, to prove she's not lying, she shows them a bit of her ballet. Thanks to that, no one suspects Jong-ran anymore. She uses the distraction to call the lawyer and explain what's happening. He tells her to keep an eye on Hye-gi for the next 3 months, since she could be discovered if she returns to the city. Jong-ran goes to Ju-won to discuss the kitchen incident, but the annoying village neighbor arrives first. That makes everyone angry, and they tell him to leave because he's ruining the party. Since he was drunk, he starts threatening everyone, saying he'll raise their rent if they don't treat him well. Jong-ran tells him that's illegal and he can only raise it 5% per year. This makes the other people start treating him even worse, since he had charged them more than that percentage. Meanwhile, in the city, Jong-ran's mother had changed her name so that her debt collectors wouldn't find her. The stepson went to the factory to find her, but didn't suspect her because of her different name. Then, her friend arrived and called her by her real name. The stepson kidnaps her and beats her to get her to reveal her daughter's location. But since she knows nothing, she asks why he's searching for her. She even married his father and kept all his inheritance. That's why they had to kill her to get their money back. The lady says she is now his grandmother, and he should show more respect, which only angers the stepson further. The next day, Jong-ran goes with Ju-won to pick strawberries, so she can talk to him and try to keep him from being suspicious. But he tells her that won't be possible and that he'll just keep an eye on her for a little longer. When they reach the greenhouse, Jong-ran picks bad strawberries and tries to pay him. But Ju-won tells her that money doesn't solve everything, that a sincere apology and doing it right next time will be enough. When they're done, Ju-won sees her scar, which makes his suspicions return, so he asks her when she got it. She tells him that it's not a scar, but a birthmark, and asks him not to ask her any more questions. Meanwhile, the stepdaughter hits her brother because a video of her mistreating her employees had been leaked. She tells him that it's okay to show his authority, but what's wrong is getting caught red-handed. Her brother was very afraid of her, so he tells her it won't happen again. The lawyer was the one who leaked the video, so to counteract, they accuse him of embezzlement. That's how they get the police to arrest him. Meanwhile, the driver and the housekeeper take advantage and return to the house to look for the will. The lawyer had already foreseen something like this, that's why he had a backup plan. Jong-ran had to send a file to a friend of hers so that a big scandal would break out. That way, the real culprit would be exposed. It turns out that her friend was a journalist and he always sent her the company's scoops. That's why she was willing to help him, since there was always good news when they worked together. Besides, this was part of Jong-ran's plan. As the old saying goes, divide and conquer. To defeat the brothers, they first had to separate them. Apparently, the one who caused the embezzlement was the stepson. But it was because Jong-ran had planned it. That's right, he offered him so much money that he couldn't say no. Feeling inferior to his sister, he used company money to buy company shares. That way, once he received his inheritance, he would have the majority of votes and could sell it. Jong-ran was happy with that outcome and knew that the stepdaughter would be furious. While they're eating, she ties her hair up, and that's when Yoo-won finally recognizes her. Had he seen her before at the president's house? That's why, after eating, he decides to confront her and calls her by her real name. She pretends not to know what he's talking about, but Yoo-won obviously doesn't believe her anymore. Ultimately, Jong-ran must ask him to keep her identity secret. Yoo-won says it's serious, but she explains her difficult life is why she pretends to be someone else. She can have another chance to start over. Because of this, he promises not to reveal her identity yet, but Jong-ran doesn't trust him. So she calls the lawyer and tells him that they have a problem. Since he knows her weakness, she must know his. The lawyer tells her that his weakness is his son, and that to convince him, she must first convince Yoo-won's son. Later, we see that Hae-ji wasn't actually that bad. She genuinely just wanted a friend. That's why, while drunk, she begs Jong-ran not to leave her, since her family abandoned her as a child and she doesn't want to experience that again. The stepson wanted to leave the country because he had betrayed his sister. He was very afraid of him, but his bodyguard tells him that he never worked for him, that he always worked for his older sister. And that's why he kidnaps him. The next day, Jong-ran asks Yoo-won not to turn her in. He tells her not to worry, but she doesn't trust him. So she decides to follow the doctor's advice and wants to win over his son first. For his part, the stepson hid his brother to scare the directors. In addition, she gathered important information about several irregularities and gave it to the journalist. She doesn't believe her, thinking it's a strategy to improve her image, but tells her she doesn't need to believe. Just review the information and trust her journalistic instinct. Meanwhile, Jong-ran decides to keep them all under surveillance, so she asks the principal to hire her friend as a ballet teacher at the kindergarten. Initially, the principal is hesitant, but Jong-ran assures her not to worry about salary as she'll handle it. At school, the teacher starts treating Yoo-won's son better. Also, since she didn't know how to teach, she lets the children play freely with her. But then loud noises heard outside. The annoying neighbor had started building a nursing home on the land he bought, but the land was right next to the kindergarten. Jong-ran and Yoo-won try to stop him, but the evil neighbor shows them no mercy and tells them he will report them for trespassing and for trying to attack him. When they are at the police station, they have a serious problem because they need to present their IDs. That's why the principal calls the lawyer to help them. But the stepdaughter had hired a thug to follow them. Since she was out of time, the lawyer does what he can to lose him and get to the town on time because if they discover the truth, Jong-ran could go to prison for identity theft. That's why the lawyer tells her that she must prevent Jong-ran from handing over her identification. To stall Hyoji fakes being attacked, distracting the police and giving her time to arrive. When the lawyer arrives, he quickly shows why he's the best in town, turning the situation around with just a few facts. Mr. Kang made the mistake as he didn't clearly see his property's boundaries, and he was encroaching on the kindergarten space, so now he had to pay them for psychological damages, and also for damaging Yunran's very fine suit. Meanwhile, in the city, Lei Hostra arranged everything so that she would be the only option for the new president, since her brother was in poor health and the heiress was nowhere to be found. This news became a trending topic, but there were still a couple of months left until the shareholders' meeting. But she was already preparing everything for it. If they get rid of Jong-ran before the meeting, she will become the new president. Lei Hostro found the village where she was hiding, so he and his henchmen went after her when they caught up. She was with him and he never hesitates to help her. The two of them try to escape, but the thugs were waiting for them further down the road. Because of that, they have no choice but to fight, which turns out to be bad luck for the thugs. Both were black belts, so they took them down easily. Lei Hostro tells the thug he'll pay 10 times more if he kills her on the spot for that price. He doesn't hesitate, but Jong-ran stops him before he hurts her, though she gets a small cut. Luckily, before things get worse, the police arrive and everyone starts to run away desperately. On the way, Jong-ran tells him that there's no point in staying in the village anymore, that she'll leave before anyone else gets hurt. Jong-ran tells him not to worry, that he'll feel better if she stays in the village, since that way he can help her when she needs it. This makes Jong-ran start to see him differently, since no one had ever helped her like that before. Meanwhile, Lei Hostro didn't know where he was, and because he dropped his pills, he suffers a terrible accident. For his part, Lei Hostra found Jong-ran's mother and sends a warning to the lawyer. If Si Jong-ran doesn't show up, then he will kill her mother. But since nobody likes the lady, the lawyer tells him to do whatever he wants. Then we see that Lei Hostro is in a mental clinic, just like his father was before he died. For his part, Jong-ran sees how Jungwo is working hard to make the town safer for her. He installs lights and security cameras so she can feel protected. The next day, she goes out to exercise and Jungwo accompanies her to protect her. This moves her, but she tells herself that she can't fall in love with him. For his part, the lawyer goes to Lei Hostro and tells him that his sister was the one who locked him up for betraying him. He initially doesn't believe him, but the lawyer says she's at the same hospital where his father was committed. Hearing this, the boy is frightened but still can't trust him. Meanwhile, at the school, there was a demonstration by the new teachers who graduated from a prestigious university. They both do a great job and the parents are very happy. But at that moment, Jong-ran's mother arrives and everyone is shocked, even Jong-ran herself. Her mother, as shameless as ever, tells her that she missed her much more now that she found out her daughter is a rich heiress. When they're alone, she tells her she's her favorite daughter and always trusted her. But this time, Jong-ran won't let herself be stepped on. Although unfortunately for her, she didn't have many options, since she didn't want the town to find out about her true identity. That's why she tells her mother that she'll give her money in exchange for not turning her in. Later, she goes to look for Yunwo, but he wasn't home. Only his son was there. The boy tells Jong-ran to be happy because his mother showed up. The boy's mother had abandoned him. That's why he tells her that he would be very happy if she came back. Missing his mother, the boy asks the teacher not to leave him, or at least to tell him if she does. Then we see that Jong-ran's mother was there for other reasons. Gaston had sent her to get as much information as possible about her daughter. She promised her a lot of money if she sold her. Since she was a bad mother, she accepted the deal, but Jong-ran already knew that something like that could happen, so she was willing to play along until she could get rid of her. Meanwhile, Gaston started her plans to become the new president of the company. That's why she blackmails and threatens some shareholders. She tells them that if they don't vote for her, she'll report them for fraud and also kill their children. Because the directors were cowards, do they accept her terms? Meanwhile, her brother struggled. Each moment, he thinks of his father's suffering and calls the lawyer to accept his help. But his sister had already found out where he was, so she sent her men to rescue him. The lawyer took advantage of this and convinced him his sister had sent those men to kill him. Back in the village, Yunran's mother was photographing everything when she suddenly bumped into Yunwo's son. Hours later, the boy is nowhere to be found. Because of this, the whole village goes on alert and all the villagers mobilize to search for the boy. Jong-ran sees that the last person who saw him was his mother, so he thinks that she took him. But when he asks her, she tells him that the boy got into a taxi, but she doesn't know where he went. Upon hearing that, he goes to look for the boy at the bus terminal. The boy believed he saw his mother. When Jong-ran finds him, he is nearly run over, but she manages to save him. The boy cries uncontrollably and tells Jong-ran he misses his mother. That night, the stepson betrays the lawyer and steals his car. But this was part of his plan. Since the lawyer had placed a microphone in his car, that way he would know what evidence he had against his sister. When he finds his car, he discovers that the evidence he had was a video where it is clearly seen how his sister murdered the president's daughter. When Gaston finds out, she is very scared, since that could ruin all her plans. So she decides to finish him off once and for all. For that, she calls her hitman, a religious man who finishes off anyone, no matter the cost. The next day, the director hires a new driver. Jong-ran is clever, so she notices something odd about him and wants to check his resume. Since everything seemed real, she decides to keep a close eye on him. So she goes with him to drop off the children all day. He didn't seem like a dangerous man. On the contrary, he seemed too harmless, and that made him even more suspicious. So, to clarify, she calls the lawyer and asks him to investigate further. He tells her his stepson has important evidence against Gaston. If they get it, they'll be closer to destroying her. But that night, someone starts breaking the security cameras. When Jong-ran goes to check, a mysterious man attacks her. She tries to defend herself, but the guy was a professional, although Jong-ran managed to see a scar on his shoulder. Then, luckily for her, Yunwo arrives. He manages to save her, then follows the guy, but he was too fast and manages to hide in the workers' housing. Since it was peak season, there were a lot of people in the village, and it would be very difficult to find him. So they decide it's better to investigate. The next day, as they return home, Heiji asks Sanwo if she likes him, intending to confess, but the general's ghost possesses him, and he loses the chance. Meanwhile, Gaston's men arrived in the city to capture his brother. He gave them the number of another room so they wouldn't catch him so easily, but it wouldn't be long before they found out. That's why he decides to run away. To help him, the lawyer sets off the fire alarm. Thanks to that, the boy is able to escape, but in the end, they end up capturing the lawyer. The next day, Yunwo and Jong-ran investigate their attacker, but despite asking around, they find no clues. At night, someone breaks the cameras again. Because of that, Jong-ran and Jung-won run to stop him, but the person wasn't the same. It was just a guy who had been paid to break the cameras. Because of this, Jong-ran starts to suspect the driver, but since the lawyer doesn't answer them, he can't do anything. As for the lawyer, he was being beaten. It turns out that he had been captured by the stepson's thugs. The stepson disappeared without paying them, so they captured the lawyer to make him tell them where he was hiding him. He tells them that he doesn't know and that he's also looking for him, so he suggests that they work for him instead. That way, he'll pay them what the stepson owes, and on top of that, give them a bonus. The next day, one of the kids spills milk on the driver. Heiji manages to see him when he's changing, and that's when we discover that he had a lot of scars. She's unsure about telling Jong-ran, so she decides to first confirm if he's truly the killer. She gets into the van and asks him to take her home, but pretends her boyfriend is calling to ensure her safety. Later, we find out that the killer's orders weren't to finish off Jong-ran, but Buscemi. In other words, the fake identity had to die so that she would be discovered and accused of identity theft. Back in the village, we see that Jong-ran's mother had drunk too much. When her daughter goes to pick her up, she can barely stand. But instead of taking her home, they take her to the police station in another town. She tells police they found her making a scene and that she doesn't know her. The lady keeps shouting that she's a bad daughter. Yunwa tells her that she can't do that to her own mother, but Jong-ran replies that she can, because her mother did much worse things to her when she was young. It was her own mother who framed her, so she would go to jail for 6 months. The The next day, there was a festival at the kindergarten. Since there were a lot of people, Jong-ran was more alert as night fell. The lawyer tells her that the driver is an ex-convict. Jong-ran arranges to meet him to try to stop him, but the driver was too strong. In the end, he is the one who ends up winning and ties her to the chair to set her house on fire. Luckily, at that moment, Hae-ji arrives and hits him very hard, but the killer didn't seem human, so he gets up and stabs her. When he's about to finish off Jong-ran, Yunhwa arrives once again to save her. He was very strong, but the killer was strong too, so in the end, he ends up running away. When everything is over, they take Hae-ji to the hospital. Dugwon was very worried, and Jong-ran decides to leave town after her best friend was nearly killed because of her. But before leaving, she tells Yunhwa's son that she needs to go away for a while, but she promises that she'll come back as soon as she finishes what she has to do. The boy says he understands and eagerly awaits her return. When Jong-ran gets home, she starts the next phase of her plan. Now they need to find the stepson and the evidence he has to destroy Gasyeon. At the same time, we find out how Gasyeon met the killer. She supposedly helped convicts with psychological issues, but instead made them more violent and manipulated them to obey her without question. At the same time, the lawyer meets an old friend of Jong-ran. After returning home, they needed someone trustworthy, so they hired her to watch the driver and housekeeper. After what happened to Hae-ji, Jong-ran asks her to be very careful, and if she feels in danger, to run away as quickly as possible. A few days later, Jong-ran organizes a press conference there. She would show her face to the world so they would know who she is and wouldn't be able to replace her if something happened to her. She also tells the world that she married the president to fulfill his last wish. The whole country watched her, and in the small town, people couldn't help but judge her. They called her a gold digger, but Gasyeon was smart and had a plan for this occasion. She hired a man to attack her and made this man say that Jong-ran hired him. When the press found out about this, they went crazy. In the end, Jong-ran gives his final statement and says that now everything depends on the vice president, that is, his stepson. He knew what she was capable of. His sister didn't want to face her. The next day, a new teacher arrives in the village. Like Jung-won, he was very handsome. She asks for his number, but he says he's not interested. He then checks where the killer was hiding. That's how he discovers that he was a religious fanatic and that he had a very suspicious card. Then we see that Gasyeon's supposed attacker was none other than Jong-ran's father. He says that his daughter hired him to kill him, but in the end, she didn't pay him the full amount. That's why he didn't finish the job and turned himself in. Due to these statements, Jong-ran is named a suspect. When the villagers heard, none believed she could do such a thing, especially Jung-won, who was very worried because Jong-ran would surely feel very lonely. His best friend tells him that he will go to the city to be with the woman he loves, so he advises him to do the same. That's how the two friends arrive in the city. Jong-ran cared for Jong-ran, so he didn't want him risking his life. He tells him to return to the village and stop following her, speaking harshly to make him leave right away. He tells him that now they are in completely different worlds and that they are no longer compatible. Later, Gasyeon rehires his brother's thugs to betray the lawyer when he captures him. She says everyone has a price, so they'll pay him whatever he wants in exchange. Should he leave Jong-ran alone? In the morning, Jong-ran is arrested and the lawyer is nowhere to be found. But it's not that he betrayed her. It's just that since he didn't accept the money, they had him kidnapped. However, since he already knew the place, he was able to escape. But he couldn't go out through the door and was very afraid to jump out the window. In the end, he had no other choice and ended up jumping out the window. Meanwhile, at the police station, Jong-ran was very afraid of her father because of everything he had done to her when she was a child. But now she had to keep her composure. She tells herself that she's no longer a helpless child. So she goes with him and confronts him. The man says he should have hit her more to stop her disrespect. Jong-ran replies she's not a child anymore and he couldn't do that now. Then we see that her godmother had recorded her mother confessing that she was the one who paid the man to make it look like Jong-ran was to blame for everything. When he hears the evidence, the man gets very angry and starts cursing his daughter. Jong-ran doesn't let herself be intimidated and tells him that she will make him pay for everything he did. When they leave the station, the lawyer describes his bad experience, but Jong-ran notes he seems fine. She then says she already knows where the vice president is. He was planning to leave the country illegally, so they had to find him before he left. When she gets home, it doesn't take long before her stepson calls her. He was desperate, so they ask him for a lot of cash in exchange for the evidence. Yun-ran agrees, and they arrange to meet at night. For his part, Yunhwa discovers where Ga-seon operated. She ran a museum, and it was in that museum where she met with the killer. Here we find out that Ga-seon was completely insane. Her thirst for power had blinded her, and now she orders the killer to finish off her own brother. Yun-ran didn't know this, so he leaves with all the money heading to the port. But Yunhwa calls the lawyer to warn him, although he doesn't listen, and tells him not to get involved. Because of this, Yunhwa has no choice but to follow the killer. When he reaches the port, the killer knows exactly where to look. Because he was so ruthless, no one dared lie to him. Fortunately, Yunhwa was following, but suddenly lost him. Because of that, he tries to call Yun-ran. But she doesn't answer, so he calls the lawyer and tells him everything he had discovered. He gets worried, so he quickly goes to look for Yun-ran. She, on her part, meets with the vice president. He tells her to make sure to destroy her sister. Yun-ran tells him not to worry and to have a good trip. But at that moment, the assassin arrives and kills him with a shot. Then he destroys the evidence. As a bonus, he tried to finish off Yun-ran, but she was ready this time, wounded him, and tried to stop him. Ga-seon had brainwashed her so much that she even sacrifices her life to help her. All of this was part of Ga-seon's plan. That's why the police arrive at that moment. The lawyer knows that if they catch her, it will be very difficult for her to be free for the shareholders' meeting. That's why Yunhwa chooses to sacrifice himself. Yun-ran wants to stay, but he insists she must go. He's innocent, so he won't go to prison. In addition, the lawyer promises to do whatever is necessary to free him. The next day, Ga-seon identifies his brother's body. Unable to blame him for everything, Yun-ran resorts to Plan B and orders her subordinate to hide the murderer's body. Then only Yunhwa will be blamed. With that, he wanted to threaten Yun-ran. He tells her that when he's in jail, he'll make him disappear. And then he'll make her son, Yun-ran, disappear too. She was furious and realized Ga-seon felt nothing. Apparently, his ambition knows no bounds, so she gives up and asks him to forgive Yunhwa and her son, Ga-seon. He says he'll spare her, but for them to survive, she must die. She must stage it as a suicide and confess to killing her brother. Since she can't find a way out of her situation anymore, she decides to give up. But before she fires, the president appears. All this time, the president had been alive, watching as his revenge unfolded. He came out now to stop Yun-ran from ruining everything. She was very surprised because she had seen his lifeless body. The lawyer knew everything and tells her that with money, anything can be done. Because of this, Yun-ran becomes angry, believing they've mocked her, but the president assures her that's not true. They simply didn't trust her enough. Because of this, Yun-ran says she kept her promise, but right now she needs time to think. Then the president faints because even though he was still alive, he was very sick. It was true that he had cancer and didn't have much time left to live. Yun-ran was upset and didn't know what to do, but the president had a solution. He changed his will and named her as his successor. This way, Ga-seon wouldn't be able to blackmail the shareholders. For her part, the stepdaughter was making preparations so that no one would discover that the killer was the one who ended her brother's life. Later, Yun-ran, when she's calm, dismisses the driver and the housekeeper. The lawyer, for his part, says it's time to start the next phase of the plan. That's why they go with Yunhwa to tell him not to lie, to tell the whole truth. That way, they can investigate the killer and find out that he shot the vice president. But what they didn't know was that Ga-seon had paid a lot of money to have the body hidden. This way, Yunhwa would be the only suspect and it would be easier to frame him. This makes their plan a bit more complicated, but the lawyer hires a lot of people to find the killer's body. At night, Yun-ran has dinner with the president. Although he wanted revenge at all costs, he tells her that he won't let any innocent person get hurt, so he asks her not to worry about Yunhwa. The next day is the vice president's funeral. Yun-ran arrives in colorful clothes to attract attention. That day, they would read the president's will, and she wanted to be the center of attention. She also tells her stepdaughter she won't get her way. Then the lawyer reads the will. In it, the president not only leaves all the shares to Yun-ran, but also names her as his successor. But the president's right-hand man was not happy with that news. Later, they managed to find the killer's body, but Gassion's men arrive first and want to burn it immediately. Fortunately, the lawyer and Jong-ran arrive to claim it, and they also brought the killer's grandmother with them. So there was nothing the bad guys could do anymore. Because of this, Gaston was furious and told her subordinate that he had better fix it, or else he would pay the consequences. She tried to bribe the doctor, but the lawyer had anticipated this and brought another detective to prevent any irregularities. Later, when he returned home, we see that the president was really unwell. He was constantly having dementia episodes and didn't have much time of lucidity left. The next day, the lawyer needed evidence that the killer had been in the village. That's why he called his sister and many neighbors to give their testimony. In this way, they would help Jong-ran, although the police told them that it wouldn't be of much use unless someone had seen the attempt to murder Jong-ran. But the only one who saw it was Hae-ji. Luckily for her, she had already recovered and went to the police station to give her testimony. The detective told her that her statement would be more than enough. After the police station, Jong-ran and the lawyer visit the press. They hand over all the evidence, which shows that the killer was the one who killed the vice president and not Jung-guo, as the police thought. But Gaston already had a solution for that. His subordinate takes all the blame, saying he acted behind his boss's back, so she would go unpunished. Later, we see that the housekeeper returns to the house to steal some things. But there she manages to see the president alive, when she thought he was dead. She faints, and when she wakes up, she calms down and realizes that it's not a ghost. The president was really alive. She takes advantage of the situation and calls Gaston to sell him that information. The evil stepdaughter tells her to get ready and to make sure to cut the power. The housekeeper follows her orders, leaving the president unprotected. Meanwhile, Jung-guo was preparing to leave the police station, but Jong-ran's friend calls her and tells her that Gaston entered the house and apparently cut the electricity. Because of that, she runs to stop her, but she was ready to finish off the president. He was having a dementia attack and thought Gaston was his daughter. That's why he spoke to her so affectionately. He told her to be careful with her stepsister, who grew up without love or a father, making her cruel and ambitious. Gaston dislikes this and tells him not to pity her. Then she confesses to him that she killed her daughter and that soon she will send her to her before dying. The president smiles and thanks Gaston. She doesn't understand why he says that, so she ignores him. Then she puts her fingerprint on a document. When Te Cuento un Drama arrives, it was already too late. The president was now really dead. The lawyer asks him to control himself, since he still has to fulfill his last will. The next day, Young-woo talks with Te Cuento un Drama. She tells him that he helped her a lot, but that she still can't be with him. Because of this, the guy has no choice but to return to the village. His son had missed him a lot, but he understands that it was to help Te Cuento un Drama. He also wanted her to come back soon, so he tells his father that he should keep helping her. Days later, the shareholders' meeting finally took place. Gaston presented the document with the president's fingerprint, in which she named herself as the new president. With that, she managed to win many votes and finally achieved her goal. But that happiness wouldn't last long, because Te Cuento un Drama arrives at the meeting and presents evidence of the president's murder. Apparently, that's why he thanked her before dying, since he had been recording everything when he saw her kill him. The shareholders are terrified because she killed him in cold blood. With that evidence, Gaston could no longer escape. The images were conclusive. Before her arrest, she tells Te Cuento un Drama it's not over. Afterward, Te Cuento un Drama states elections are unnecessary since he'll give his position to the president's right-hand man. He will also sanction shareholders for corruption. After all this scandal, the press gives more coverage to the president's death. In addition, Gaston's subordinate reveals the truth and says that he was only following orders because he was very afraid of his boss. For her part, she hired the best lawyers and was willing to bribe to get released. But Jong-ran was not going to allow it. They needed to complete the president's revenge, and for that, they needed to make her pay for his daughter's death. On the trial day, Te Cuento un Drama got the evidence the vice president had, who had made a copy in case something happened to him. In the video, you can clearly see how Gaston ends the president's daughter's life. Gaston, for his part, he didn't feel any remorse. On the contrary, he laughed and told his lawyer to fix it immediately. He got fed up and said he'd rather quit. A few days later, Jong-ran visits the president to say goodbye and tells him He finally kept his promise. His daughter finally got the justice she deserved. Woe was waiting for her too. Jong-ran says that although it's over, she can't go with him or return to the village and act like nothing happened. Yongwo tells her that she can and that he will be waiting for her, but he warns her that he won't wait forever. He'll only wait for 10 years. We then see the housekeeper tried to copy Jong-ran's strategy. That's why she dresses like her and hopes to find an old millionaire to leave her his money. Meanwhile, the driver searches for Hyeji. She tells him that he's too old for her and that now she's found someone much better. Do-won didn't realize she meant him at first, but once he does, he takes charge and tells the driver to go. He wants to confess his love, but Hyeji says she likes him first. She asks him to be her boyfriend. Do-won agrees, and they prepare for their first kiss. But neither of them had kissed before, so they don't know how to do it. But in the end, they improvise and it turns out well. Then, Te Cuento un Drama arrives and tells her friend that she is very happy for her and wishes her all the best. She also thanks her for being her best friend. The lawyer, for his part, also leaves. Now that the revenge is over, he no longer had any reason to stay in that house, but he would still keep working with Te Cuento un Drama. Then, the principal receives the kindergarten papers, meaning that she is now the legitimate owner, and no one could bother her or threaten to close the kindergarten anymore. Later, Te Cuento un Drama no longer knew what to do with revenge. After getting rid of both her mother and father, she was alone again. When she turns off the cameras, she watches a video from the president, who apologizes for making her endure everything. He hopes she finds people who truly love her and never lets them go. She becomes emotional and chooses to follow his advice. Sometime later, we see that Gassion was sentenced to death. But before that, the mother of Te Cuento un Drama gets back at her for the things she did. Te Cuento un Drama left the house, followed the president's advice, and returned to the village. Meanwhile, Heiji and Do-won were preparing to marry. Everyone was very excited. The lawyer and all his friends were invited. The only one missing was Te Cuento un Drama. When the ceremony ends, she appears to congratulate her best friend, who thanks her for being there on such an important day. And when it's time to throw the bouquet, she throws it so that her friend catches it, then goes to the beach to talk with Jung-woo. He says that he's very happy that she's come back and asks her never to leave again and to live together for the rest of their lives. Jong-ran agrees, and that's how the story ends. The revenge was fine, but obviously it could have been better. Although this story ended happily, and as you know, I like happy endings. Thank you very much for watching the video until the end. I hope you enjoyed the summary. Don't forget to give me a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any videos. See you in the next story.